Good evening, welcome. My name is Mark Smith. I'm the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment in the district, which means I work in the superintendent's office. I oversee the curriculum, instruction, and assessment for the entire district, plus a couple other things are folded into my title. Also the Director of the Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV grants for the district. I'm the English Language Learner Director for the district, and a whole series of other things. And my partner in crime tonight is Jim.
Jim Birchfield. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology for the district.
And so what we're talking about today is we sort of got a two-part presentation that is linked. I'm going to talk a little bit about homework, generally speaking, how you can support homework, and talk about sort of district expectations around homework, just sort of give you a sense of, approximately how much time you should expect kids to be spending on homework, what to do if you think your kids are spending too much time, how you can support as a parent, and have a little bit of a conversation about how that might look a little differently at the elementary level versus the middle school level versus the high school level. And then Jim's going to talk a little bit about some of the points of sort of contact and the way that you as a parent can stay engaged. So whether it's through the Aspen portal around grades, or whether it's around Google Classroom or some of the other ways that we use in the district to communicate back and forth with parents, to communicate back and forth with kids, to share assignments, share grades, things like that. So sort of, again, that home school connection piece, but from a technology end. So before we get started, can we just do a quick buzz around the room, who you are and where your child or children fall within our district? So, are they one of the elementary schools, the middle school, etc. So start over.
My name is Rebecca Vetters. I have two at the high school, one at the middle, and one at the elementary.
Carolyn Kiefer, I have one at the middle school and one at the high school.
Teresa Johnson, and I have a 7th grader at the middle school.
Marcus, I got a freshman here.
Marcelo Vasquez, I have a 9 and senior high school.
Catherine, I have a 4th grader, an 11th grader, and one will soon start pre-K. So this info will go a long way.
Rosie Buckler, I have one, she's in elementary school.
Excellent. So I will talk a little bit just in generalities around why homework. So homework, when done right, really should just be an opportunity for students to practice stuff that they've previously learned in class. So homework, at least 95% of the time, should not be new information. So they shouldn't be going home and learning algebra at home. That's our job, to teach those things at school. Should be going home and learning to read, or learning to write if it's at the kindergarten level, to learn what goes into writing a sentence. It's instead practicing things that they have already learned in schools. If they're going home and reading, they're reading, they've been taught to read, and they're learning to read, practicing reading in books that they've already, that they've demonstrated some proficiency with. If I go back to my algebra example, they're practicing something that was either taught that day or maybe taught a day before, where they're trying to make that learning really stick by practicing it in a repeated way. And they're also, especially at the elementary and up through the middle level, it's even less about, the learning is more about building a habit for understanding that some work has to get done beyond the school day. They're really preparing for upper middle school and for high school, understanding that there is practice that has to happen beyond the day. So really at the elementary specifically, we're working on really building good habits to prepare them for success for middle school and high school. And then when you're thinking about how much time your kiddos are spending on homework, a rule of thumb is about 10 or 15 minutes per grade that the child is at. So the example I have there is a 5th grade student should be spending somewhere between 50 and 75 minutes on homework. At the high school, it's similar, but there's then some other things you have to factor in. So if your kid is in a bunch of AP courses, There's going to be more coursework that goes with that. There's actually coursework that starts before they enter even into that AP class. A lot of summer work that goes in, a lot of pre-work that goes in. And in an AP course, they might actually be doing, that's sort of in that 5%. They might actually be doing some learning of new content outside the classroom and then bringing that learning into the classroom to deepen. And with the high school too, you have to think a little bit about the rotation of the schedule. So, where they have 7 courses, they don't have 7 courses every day. So, if I'm dropping 2 blocks tomorrow, I'm getting assigned homework tonight. I've really got 2 nights to get that homework done because I'm not going to see that class. Actually, you might not really understand how the high school schedule operates. The kids have 7 courses, but on any one day, they only go to 5 classes, and it rotates. 2 classes are just sort of dropped off the schedule, and then skip a day, and they come back, so that they're in the afternoon. Let's say on a day 3, they don't have them on day 4. Then on day 5, they're back in the morning. Then they move to the middle. Then they move to the end. Then they drop off the schedule, and it rotates that way. So that's sort of a thing to think. The kids, and that's a good goal that you can provide as a parent, is helping them plan for that. Thinking about how many times, especially if we like prolonged things, if they know they've got a larger project due, when is that class actually going to be? Helping, especially by the high school level, we'll talk a little bit about that, is really helping them structure and organize, and less actually providing direct content support around the homework. And then the last bullet there, sort of thinking about these guidelines, if homework should not be like this prolonged death sentence and punishment. Like if your kid is spending in the 5th grade and is spending 3 hours on their homework, then something isn't right. And that's a time that you're going to want to contact the teacher in the school as soon as possible. And because your kids should not be spending that much time on homework. And if you follow that guideline, you should be within that guideline. And we'll talk about some things you're going to want to check at home, because I have a daughter sometimes who's currently in the 8th grade, sometimes spends 3 hours on her homework, but it's not because she's doing prolonged agony. It's because of some other things which we're going to talk about in a second. She may not be using that 3 hours very well. So it's if your kids, it's 10 to 15 minutes of focused work by grade level. But again, it shouldn't be this crying, tears, yelling fight to get them to do the homework. If that's your experience on a regular basis, everybody has a bad night, but if that's your regular experience, then contact the teacher, contact the school, and as soon as possible, because it's something there that there isn't a good match. Sometimes, especially as the kids get higher and higher up in the schools, sometimes maybe there's some miscommunication somewhere in the school and people aren't really understanding, how they're all, it's like a cumulative effect, right? So I can only one teacher for English, one teacher for math, one teacher for this, one teacher for that. And they're maybe not understanding the cumulative effect for the way that your particular kid is scheduled. So I'm going to hand out something. What I've done is abbreviated some of the stuff that's on here. That's not for that section. And so this comes from the National Association of School Psychologists. And it's a guide for the way parents can support homework at home. And what I've done is just sort of summarize some of the key parts. And so it sort of falls into 2 categories, right? First category is messages that you can promote at home. And the second is specific strategies for how you can actually support their kids in their homework. So when we think about messages, you play a key role. We recently did the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we presented those results at a previous event. And one of the key messages in there is around the messages that we send as parents around alcohol use, tobacco use, drug use, impact the decisions our kids make. And the statistics bear it out, not only here in Monomoy, but consistently across the state and across the country. But the messages that we send are important. So thinking about the messages that we send about homework, one consistent message that we want to send is that homework is an important part of the school process. It is something that they need to do, and it's something that is important for them to be a successful student. You also want to let them know that you were there to support them in their successful completion of that. So, this is important. You need to do it. I'm here to support you in that process, but I ain't doing it for you. And that's an important message to understand for the kids too, is I will support you through this process, but I'm not doing your homework for you. Because that's not helping them in any way. And then when we talk about specific strategies, there's more on that sheet, that paper that I gave you, but these are some of what I think are the sort of the 4 big ones. Is to check in with your kids every day about their homework. Even when they get into high school, just checking in. What do you have for homework today? They've demonstrated success and they're moving right along as far as getting their homework done. It goes back to this message, right? That it's important and I'm here to support you. If I'm going to continue just to check in every day, what do you got for homework? Do you need anything? Any help? How's that project coming along that I know that's due? Whatever, that essay that you're going to write for Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so. Just checking in regularly is important. The next one is about establishing clear routines. This goes back to the first slide, one of the top bullets was around, the second bullet, I think, was around establishing the habit of homework. So thinking about what works in your life that can be as predictable and consistent of a routine for the kids as possible. So in our house, I've got one kiddo who's very active in after-school sports clubs. The other one who's not as much. So for the one who's not as much, it's as soon as he gets home from school, that's what he gets his homework done, and then he's off to have the rest of the evening to do chores and then have fun, right? But for my daughter, who's got a very, very busy schedule filled with all sorts of extracurriculars, we have to look at her week and determine, well, on this night you have CCD, so you have field hockey practice, so you've got like a 1-hour window right here. And this is where it's going to happen on every Monday. And Tuesday nights look a little bit different, and Wednesday nights look a little bit different. But it's pretty consistent from week to week, and establishing that routine that this is what's going to happen during field hockey season, this is what's going to happen when you're preparing for drama for the play. In 8th grade, she's got a fair amount of independence, but still needs that support and structure in planning out long term. You think about where we are in our stages of lives, we have a lot more experience, and we tend to be a lot more short or long range thinkers all the way through high school. The adult brain isn't fully formed until about 22 years old. So there's still this whole prefrontal cortex isn't developed in teenagers. It's why they take risks and why they think they're invincible and why they challenge some of the things that to the rest of us seem completely obvious. It's because there's actually part of the brain that's not fully developed yet. And sometimes it's part of planning is one of those areas that isn't fully yet developed. And that's a way that we can support them all the way up through high school, is thinking about, college applications and wherever they are in the process, right? Sort of, this is a big thing. How might we chunk it into some smaller ways and think down the road about everything that we need to accomplish? Teenagers especially are not very good at thinking beyond first period. So the more we can help them start to think further down the road, the better. Supervision, sort of that idea about checking in every day and supervising the homework, but without micromanaging the homework. Because again, but we do want to be building independence, and we want to be getting to this point for when they go off after high school that they have developed these skills, not that they're going to call us every time they have to, I don't know, I can't try to think of a good example. I got to go for a job interview and I need to know all the steps necessary. We want them to have some level of, because we've trained them, right? We're training them towards some independence. And then I've already talked about this one, but helping them establish and maintain organizational systems. At our stages in life, we've gone through we have all these experiences, right? And we figured out ways to organize ourselves, to use when whatever it is that you utilize, however you utilize, a calendar I mean, I've Post-it notes all over my desk at work for things that I need to remember to do, and a digital calendar for this, and a way to structure my email so that I can find stuff when I need to find it for that. We all have organizational systems that we use in our lives, and the more we can help our kids think about, at high school, again, you're monitoring, you're maintaining 7 courses. It's a pretty wide breadth of things. So anything we can do to help the kids organize themselves, the better. And again, preparing and organizing and thinking about their homework is no different. So circling back to the point that I made about my daughter. So right now, she is supposed to be doing her homework. Okay? I zipped and set her to do her homework. And I said, go downstairs and do your homework. I went and did a couple things in the house and went back to check on her, and she was standing in front of the mirror and doing her hair. So she obviously hadn't started on her homework yet. And we had a little conversation about making sure that she got started on her homework, and that I needed her to put her phone on Do Not Disturb mode. Because what will happen oftentimes is, if not told to do that, then she's in 47 group texts, and if anybody has an 8th grader, they just ping hi, 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 and then there's emojis, and the phone's just going brr, 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 brr. And there's no way to stay focused if you're constantly getting pulled and your attention is getting shifted. So there's actually a myth, and I'm guilty of it, people thinking that you can actually multitask. But the brain research is pretty clear on this. None of us can actually multitask. What our brain is doing is just shifting. So, and we might be rapidly shifting back and forth, but we're not doing 2 things at the same time. We're moving from one thing and moving to the other. And actually there is a time period in which your brain needs to re-shift and refocus, especially if you're trying to do something that requires sustained thought. So let's say you're trying to write a paper. Or what was I working on today? I was working on a memo that I had to write. It's the closest thing to describe it. So I had to write in prologue, a sort of multi-paragraph thing that I had to get down on paper. And I was getting texted by somebody. And every time, and I would say I'm just as guilty as my daughter. And so every time I went and read the text message and then tried to shift back to the writing, it took me a little while to get back into the writing mode. And there's actually been research done that about 40% of productive time is lost of people trying to switch between tasks. And then there's actually further research that says the more we're externally distracted, the more then we internally distract ourselves. And I've noticed this in myself. If I don't put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and keep as many distractions away from myself, so let's say I get 2 or 3 text messages, then even if I haven't gotten a text message, I'll pick my phone up and check. Did I get one? And it's all in, I can give you some of the science about the oxytocin, not oxytocin. Oxytocin's a good one. Serotonin, that's not serotonin either. It doesn't matter. It's a chemical that gets released in your brain every time you get a text message, which it's like the feel-good chemical. And it's like a quick little hit every time it goes off. And so we as parents can help in controlling the environment in which our kids do their homework. So, is there a rule, policy, procedure, whatever in your house about what happens to their device? A lot of our kids have to do their homework, maybe on a Chromebook, or on my daughter's district is an iPad, same difference, but they can have their homework and then they can have 4 other tabs open. They can have an instant messaging tab open, they can have Instagram open, they can have, whatever. So that's thinking about the environment, and then that on the previous slide, it talked about supervision, periodically taking a peek on the screen, what's actually on the screen, what tabs do they actually have open? Because if they're, again, toggling back and forth between the essay they're supposed to be doing and Instagram, they're dividing their attention, and they're taking longer to do their homework, and they're probably not doing as good a quality on it because they're not having the sustained focus time on their homework. Some people like having some type of like music in the background is actually helps you focus, and actually something that works for me. Like I can have like low level music on in the background. But if your kid is like every time you go upstairs, which is the case with my daughter, like she's dancing to some musical because she's a big musical theater geek, like that's not helping her. It's not helping her actually get her homework done. So there's no music during homework time. Are you in a room where there's you might be at the dining room table or the kitchen table, and the living room's in the other room, and either they can see the television screen or somebody's watching something that they can hear that is intriguing to them. Like my son will come from 3 rooms away if he hears something that he thinks he might be interested in instead of doing his homework. So thinking about the environment in which they're going to do their homework. Can you create as much as possible a distraction-free environment for them? And then thinking about it, I've mentioned this a couple different times, thinking about it from a differentiated approach. So depending upon where your kid is in the system. So elementary kids should need more support. You might actually be providing some support in the learning, right? Because their brains aren't as sophisticated enough to necessarily hold information, even if they were taught it. If they were taught how to do double-digit addition, it's like a 2nd grade concept, and they were taught it. That 8-year-old brain, if they got it in the morning, might not be holding on to all the details at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whenever they sit down and do their homework. So you might actually be providing a little bit more support and sort of some reminders and some prompts about how you might, did your teacher talk to you about, or here's how, mom does it, or here's how dad does it. You might actually be providing a little bit more prompting at the elementary level. But the most important part, again, is about establishing that routine, like that we do homework. It is part of what we do as part of being in school, that you're going to be focused during that time, establishing all of these things that we've talked about. It's going to be distraction-free. You're going to, one of the things talks about there is incentives, which when one of the sort of subtopics they talk about in that article is knowing your kid. Like your kid might not be able to do a prolonged 45-minute, homework piece. Maybe it has to be chunked. 15 minutes of focus time, you'll get a 5-minute break. 15 more minutes of focus time, you'll get a 5-minute break. Whatever's going to work. It's part of it's about knowing your kiddo, but establishing that routine as early and as young as possible. As we move into middle school, we want to start to sort of pull back on the content support. They should be able to hold more information in their head and bring it home. They should also be working towards building independence, towards going back to the teacher. Like if they didn't understand something, even if they got home, they thought they knew it, they got home in the homework, that's where that piece that I talked about communicating back with the school. So if the kid's been working on the homework for, let's say it's their math, right? And they've been working on it for 30 to 45 minutes, and they've still got 3 other subjects to get to. It might be time to say, I think you've been working on this hard enough. I'll email Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so and let them know you're going to come and see them first thing in the morning because you don't understand this and you need some further explanation on that. And that may be, and then that's putting the responsibility, starting to shift that responsibility back to them to go and advocate for themselves, but still supporting them in the parental role, but not expecting that you're going to be able to understand and teach them the math. Then we're the educators, that's our job. Like we're supposed to teach them. So you guys have a responsibility to supporting them and advocating for them when they're running into a challenge. Because I know, like especially math, right? Because we don't teach math necessarily the same way we all were taught math. So it becomes sort of this dynamic tension between you and the child. Just try to ease some tension. It's not your responsibility to teach them the math. If they haven't absorbed something, then helping them to advocate and get the instruction back from the classroom teacher is really a key part of your role. And then, you've established the expectations in elementary school. We're maintaining them in the middle school level and starting to build some independence. I used to teach middle school, And, you know, when I talk in parent conferences sort of about the dynamic, interesting role of middle schoolers, and middle school parents, and middle school teachers, is like the best analogy I used to say is it's kind of like fishing. Like, and if anybody's ever fished, if you're bringing in a big fish, there's periods where you got to reel the fish in, and then there's other periods when you got to let the fish run, or you'll snap the line. So, like with middle schoolers, it's like finding that dynamic tension between letting them run a little bit, and then when they show that they need a little support and they might not quite as independent as they think they are, it's time to reel the line back in and tighten things back up and sort of tighten your level of support. And then when they start to have some confidence and some skill again, release and work back towards more independence. And, you know, and it doesn't mean that there's less independence in 5th grade always and more independence in 7th grade. It's probably going to change multiple times throughout that whole cycle. And then as you get to high school, you know, kids in AP Physics, there's no expectation that you can teach AP Physics. If you can, give us a call, because we're always looking for AP Physics teachers. But my point being, like, really at that point is almost no content support. It's really about maintaining those expectations and checking in regularly with your kid, helping with some of that long-term planning, and supporting them around both problems. Because really, as we get into the high school, 8, 9, 10, definitely by 10, 11, 12, we really want those kids to be advocating and you supporting them to say, you know, you should really email your teacher now. Say you're struggling with this and work with that teacher to find a time to, whether you're going to go during JOSM, AOT, or whether you're going to meet with them before or after school to better understand this, because you shouldn't be spending an hour and 45 minutes on this homework or whatever. That's an exaggeration. But, and helping them problem solve situations when they find themselves in it. Like I said, thinking about time management, like especially on longer things, like how, or, you know, if your kids are involved in multiple things, maybe they have a job, maybe they, like I said, are in drama, or they're in a club, or they're on a sports team, or they're on mock trial. I mean, there's 1,000 opportunities in this school and outside of this school that they could be participating in. Some of my daughter's friends are in dance outside of here. The amount of hours they spend in the dance studio is astronomical. So, but the kids might need some help in, all right, so here's all the things you got going on. Where's your homework going to fit in this? And we need to work out a schedule for how we're going to actually make this work for you. All right, so questions on just homework in general, because Jim's going to transition and talk about the technology end.
What if you have a student that has an IEP?
Yep.
I'm speaking mainly of my middle school. Like math is just not his strong point.
Right.
He gets the academic support at school, but I mean, he comes home and he just has this blank look on his face, even though it's something that they had just done, a couple hours prior. So, and I know that the math is not the same as we had learned it, and I guess and I feel like, do the teachers speak with each other? Like, I mean, I'm going to speak in my middle school, like my 2 high schoolers, example today, came home, oh, do you have homework? Nope. And my middle school's like, I've got ELA, I've got math, like every subject. So
Right.
he's just overwhelmed and frustrated. So I just didn't know if, I don't know, how would you, especially with children who might struggle a little more, if they have an IEP, things. I mean, I just feel like I'm constantly emailing his math teacher.
Right.
And so I just, that's the main reason I came tonight, is his frustration. Because he's just, and I don't want to every night be like, look, it's okay, you don't have to do math homework.
Yeah.
But he definitely takes twice as long to do something than, another student may.
Right.
And I don't want to have it say, well, hey, every night I know you get like 2+ hours of homework, but I'm just trying to figure out what would be the best approach.
That's right.
with him.
So in the unique, or the case of an IEP, part of that you probably want to bring to the team meeting process as well, and say like, so what's a reasonable modification or accommodation for homework based upon, and I don't want to paint too broad of a brush here, because the I in IEP is individualized, right? So every kid needs something a little bit different. But so it might be in math that the team makes the determination that we're going to truncate the amount, we're going to truncate the quality, but not the quantity. So like, I'm don't know the exact homework assignments, but let's say there's 10 homework problems, and they're divided into let's say they cover 5 different sort of things that they learned that day. So there's 2 problems for each. Maybe he just has to do 1 problem of each. Understanding, and again, I'm painting with a broad brush because I don't know the specific, but a child with a diagnosed or an evaluated slower processing speed, then we have to recognize through the team process that processing speed and processing time is something that it takes longer. So there might be a reasonable accommodation to make for homework where we're going to expect quality over quantity. It's a common accommodation. So we'd be advocating for that with not only the math teacher, but also maybe having, I don't know, I'm assuming you have, but maybe you haven't brought the special educator into the conversation as well.
Yeah. It's more detailed than any person here.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I just was curious, in regards to it's been very hard. 6th grade is kicking me butt.
Yeah.
Excelled in great in 5th grade, had wonderful support, and it's just a struggle every day.
Right. So sometimes it can be there can be an adjustment because sometimes there's expectation shifts from one grade to another, and he's going from being on a 2-teacher team to a 4-teacher team, which is another adjustment. But I would say continue to advocate. B, there's something, and again, without being specifically involved in the specific case, there's probably some communication piece where the school, the math teacher and or the special educator can be providing you with something at home to be able to support him in the homework process. And again, and if you're not getting the headway there, then I would bring it to the team process and the conversation there, because he shouldn't be going home and spending 3 hours a month. Cool. Other questions?
So they missed a lot of days due to sickness recently.
Yep.
We're catching up. And I just stayed on her, just like email your teacher, email your teacher, email your teacher. So when you look on Aspen though, and there's zeros and you're freaking out and you're looking at your kid going, there's no way you're failing this writing class, I'll kill you. However, and I know because she's out, and the grades were due today, right? It was the closing, I think, today or tomorrow.
Today,
So, as a parent, I've always had this. This goes back to even, I've had one that's graduated now, as you know. That's the part with Aspen, and it might be a technical question. I'm okay because my daughter, thank God, does keep up to a degree. But then there's sometimes that she's still 14. I love her and she's a great kid, but she's still 14. So if I don't see that, when should it? I guess my question is, how much time? And I'll email the teacher and stuff, but I'm trying to give her because now she's in high school.
Yep.
So I'm trying not to be the helicopter parent, and I really don't like to be anyway. But how much time should that grade be in Aspen? I guess is a good question. When does it become hey, that zero's still there? Why is that zero still there?
Yeah. So it's.
I guess how often do they update? Is every teacher different? Is there a requirement?
There's some flexibility from teacher to teacher. By contract, they have 10 days.
Okay, so if it's due on a certain day, and she handed it late, so you should see that change within. Okay.
But also emailing the teacher
Yes.
to and again, it's the phishing, right? So, if there's times to, I'm just checking in. I heard from Ava in this case that she handed it in. But for whatever reason, maybe she's being 14 has demonstrated some things that are making you question a little bit. So maybe you email the teacher. I just want to confirm that she handed it in. If not, please let me know immediately so I can follow up with her to make sure you get that assigned. We get Jim's going to share a statistic that was it 94% or something of teachers. We did a survey recently to get a sense of what people are using. And 94% of teachers, it's email is the primary parent conversation. So if you're, and then at the high school, actually the high school especially, the guidance counselors too are important advocates for the kids inside the school as well, and helping sort of be that other position in the building that can help kind of wrangle everything. They have sort of that more global view of the student, and like the, she's only in 8th grade now, but like that longitudinal view, like with that kid 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Other questions? On homework specifically, Jim's going to talk about. Jim?
Thanks. So Mark covered more of the research and the theory about homework, and I'm going to cover a little bit more of the practical, the digital, electronic piece of how you can sort of keep tabs on what's going on in the classroom and get information that can help you support your child at home with the homework. So I'm going to cover those things. So the first piece of this is what programs we're using that are used to communicate with you at home. And like Mark was saying a minute ago, that a survey that we did recently, 94% of the teachers that responded to the survey said I use email to communicate with students and families. So on the student level, the email will be going through Google Drive, Google Docs. When the teachers and the students exchange documents or information, there's an email that goes along with that. So the kids have an internal email set up so that they can receive notices from the teachers. And then communicating at home, that's how the teachers will primarily get in touch with you if they need to communicate with you about anything that's going on with your particular student. So what this gets to is, do you have an email address registered with us in the district? Do we have an email address for you? And I would say that's like probably the most important thing we can do in terms of maintaining like contact and getting the communication that you need from the district, is make sure you've got a valid email address on file at the school where your child is, or if you have children in multiple schools, just make sure that you've got an email address in Aspen. So I guess if you weren't getting any kind of communication from the school on any level, that would indicate that you didn't have an email address on file with us. Occasionally this is kind of like a sidebar, but we have a Blackboard communication mass notification system. And if there's like a school closing or a snow day or something like that, it'll send out an email blast to everybody in the district. If you're not getting those kinds of messages, that's a sign that you may not have a valid email address on file with us. So I would say that's a really key thing, is just make sure that you've got that set up. Is there?
Actually sent one out today.
Yeah.
Carpenter said when district-wide today.
Oh, okay.
That's a good way. If you didn't get an email from Dr. Carpenter, the superintendent today, then you're not on the distribution list.
Yeah.
He sent one out earlier today.
Maybe the question to ask is, anybody here not receive a message from Dr. Carpenter? Okay, so everybody's got an email. It's working. Okay, all right, great. So that's really the way you're going to get contacted by the teachers. So that's really, make sure you check that. Occasionally, this is rare, but Joy just told me that one of her messages that she had sent to a teacher here at the high school somehow ended up in like teacher spam folder, and the teacher didn't see the message. It's pretty rare for that to happen, but if you're sending messages to teachers and you're not hearing anything back from them, that could be like a sign that something happened to the message, that it went to the wrong folder, went into spam or something like that. If it happens too much, maybe contact the main office at the school and just say, hey, I've been sending some messages and I'm not getting any response. Could you check with the teacher to see if they're going through? That might be something to do just in case that you're not getting a response. So hopefully it's not the teacher just being non-responsive. So email is super important. Some of the other apps and tools and programs that the teachers are using, and it really depends on what level your child is at, whether elementary, middle, or high. And pretty much, Aspen is more of a middle school, high school tool, because the grades are put in at middle school and high school in a different way than they are at the elementary. So the elementary is a whole different type of report card, and Aspen doesn't make a lot of sense for that type of report card. So you're not going to get the same kind of like level of information and access at the elementary level with Aspen. We may try and find ways to use it to communicate with you more at home, but I would say Aspen is primarily used in middle school and high school to input the grades, and you should be able to go into Aspen and see the grades for your child at in each class. And if there's issues or problems with that, let me know at the end, and then we can kind of resolve any problems that you might have, like trying to access Aspen or log in, or any issues with that. But so Aspen, middle school, high school. Some teachers are using Twitter, mostly at the high school, I would say, just a handful. And that's more of a kind of just sending out a blast to the kids saying, hey, check out this resource. Or I know one teacher at the high school uses it for like a homework assignment. So we'll send out tonight's homework is read these pages, or check out this resource, and he puts the link in there. I would say that's used a lot less than, say, Aspen and Google Classroom. So Google Classroom docs or sites, that's part of our, we have like an ecosystem, I would call it, in district, where we're a Google district. So all the kids have Google accounts. They have Chromebooks, which integrate with the whole Google system. So a lot of stuff gets done through Google Classroom, Google Docs, Google Sites is like a website building tool. And all of that integrates with the teacher's email, students' documents, and their Chromebooks. So it works really seamlessly together. So there's a lot of communication that goes on between, especially the students and the teachers through Google. I'll cover it in more depth, but Google Classroom is something that you as parents can get access to on a kind of like on a limited basis. It'll send summaries to you showing like assignments that are posted and assignments that are turned in, any grades that have been posted, or missing assignments, that kind of thing. So I'm going to cover more in depth on Aspen and Google Classroom in a minute. Blooms is more of an elementary level tool that a handful of teachers are using. I know a couple of the kindergarten teachers like it. It's something that, again, only some use it, most don't, but it's another tool that's out there. Remind is more of a middle school, high school. It's an app that'll send out reminders about homework. Again, limited use on that, but a handful of people are using it. Class Dojo is an elementary level tool for the most part, and that it's kind of like a fun tool that some of the teachers use, where it has little avatars for each student, and it'll send home like a little message about, your student was great in class today, or your student needs to work on something like that. But again, only a handful of teachers might use that, and they should let you know if they want you to communicate through those tools, they'll let you know about that. But I'm just trying to cover all of the things that could possibly be used in the district to communicate with families. And then there's a good old-fashioned telephone call that still happens. And some teachers use the student agendas to kind of keep things going. And they, ask kids to write down the assignments and the agenda each day and take it home. If you haven't checked by the parents, check the home. So that's pretty much the list of all the tools that the teachers told us they've been using in the survey that we did recently. And the slideshow we're going to make available on the website. And sorry, let me just go back. Anything that's in blue here is a link. So later on, if you want to go check out some of these things, you feel free to just click on the link. It'll take you to the site and you can see what's going on with the students. So those are really the communication tools that we just covered. This is more about programs for assignments, homework, and grading. So that it kind of narrows down quite a bit here. But we're really covering like two of the main tools that are used primarily for grading homework assignments, that kind of thing. So we have Aspen, which is basically our grading program. It's our student information system is really what it is. So a student information system, it's kind of like the database that collects every bit of information that we need about all of the students and even the employees in the district. So it's our primary database. It's where everything gets collected in terms of the data about the kids. And there's a piece of that that is used for the grading. And that's the part that's primarily of interest to the parents because they want to be able to go in, take a look at what's happening in each class, and they want to be able to see the assignments and see the grades that are posted for those assignments. So that happens in Aspen. Has everybody been able to access Aspen? I guess not the elementary level parents, but in middle school, high school. Anybody have problems with getting to it? Okay. So we can, at the end of this, I can help anybody that needs help to get logged into Aspen and get you set up with that. So the primary purpose of Aspen is really, it's not meant to be a replacement or a substitute for face-to-face conversations or telephone conversations. It's really just a place where you can get a kind of a quick snapshot of what's going on with the grades and the assignments in the classes that your students are taking. So we want to be careful that it doesn't become this sort of replacement to real communication one-on-one with the teacher. So try and keep that in mind, that it's a tool to help you have that conversation with the teachers. It gives you a little more information, and then you can ask questions. But definitely just see it for what it is. Again, the access is really middle school, high school at this point. We'll look into the future if we can really make it useful for elementary. We will. Again, links here. These anything in blue here is a link. So I'm going to show you a quick tutorial here that it does a nice job of just going over what Aspen does from the parents' perspective. Sounds up on this.
Every parent is familiar with the proverbial one-word answer that follows the question, "How was your day at school?" Use your Aspen Family Portal as a window into your students' education. You can see their latest grades, attendance, assignments, and more. To log on to the portal, go to the web address your school provided and enter your information. If you're the parent or guardian of more than one student in the district, you can access information for each student with a single login. The Family Portal opens to the home page. Here you might see school information such as district-wide announcements or the date progress reports will be issued. Be sure to check the To-Do widget, which lists assignments that are due today, tomorrow, and overdue. If you have several students, select each student's name from the drop-down to see their assignments one at a time. Aspen Pages are like mini websites your district, school, teachers, advisors, and coaches can create to share information with you and your students. To see them, click the Pages tab. The home page automatically opens first. To access other pages and add them to your quick access menu, click Page Directory. The directory sorts pages by student, if you have more than one. When you click Add under a page, that page is added to your menu. So be sure to add pages you'll use often. The menu organizes your pages first by student, then by type, such as academic, athletic, or club. Click a category to see your pages of that type. Click the Family tab to see your students' information, such as the daily attendance, schedule, transcript records, conduct referrals, and assessment scores. If you have more than one child in the school district, you'll need to select which child's records you want to see before clicking any of the side tabs. Click Academics to see your students' latest grades, using the drop-down to switch students. Click a class name to see their grades and attendance summary. Then click the Assignment Side tab to see the scores they earned for each assignment. You can also click the Attendance Side tab to see your students' latest class attendance records. The Groups tab lists any groups your student is a member of and any scheduled events. The Calendar tab is your student's online agenda. Here you can see assignments for all of their classes. Assignments appear on the dates they're due. Double-click a calendar item to see a summary of its details. If you access the family portal from a mobile device, Aspen Mobile opens. This streamlined version of Aspen is designed specifically for phones and tablets. Simply tap areas to find information, such as your student's assignment to-do list, their grades, and their pages. Keeping up with your students' academic progress and everything going on at school is easier than ever with the Aspen Family Portal. Did you know that there's an entire video series on using the portals in Aspen? Here are some other titles you might be interested in.
So that just gives you kind of a quick overview. There was a little section towards the beginning where they talked about pages. They're like little mini websites. Some teachers use them, most don't. So the pages is kind of not such a big thing. It doesn't get used a lot, so just a heads up on that. The primary thing is being able to access the grades for the kids. Joy was just trying to explain to me something about the app. There's an app version of Aspen and then the website.
So this is just a little tip. So, and they talked about it a little bit at the end, but if you go to Aspen on your phone, you're going to get a view that looks like this. And it's really hard to use and really buggy, and it's not what you're mostly used to using in the demo that they showed through most of that. So just a little tip that if you want to have that sort of more traditional view, if you just hit these bars up here, and I know this is really hard to see, and scroll down, it'll say View Full Site, and it'll take you to that more standard view that you're used to on the laptop. So that's just a little user tip if you're finding it hard to access Aspen on a mobile device, because the way they have the stuff all formatted, it's really hard to use. So just a little tip.
So yeah, so like I do like 90% of everything on my phone now. So I always want everything to work on the phone, but the Aspen app is like, man, it's like so simple. So your best bet is to use a computer if possible. Just use the full site. So that's a tutorial, and then the login. It looks like this. So it'll say here, Monomoy Regional School District. There's a link on the website that you can use to get to it. The link will be in the slideshow that we're going to share tonight, so you should be able to get to it. The other way, I believe you can just do a search, a Google search for Monomoy, Aspen login, and most likely it'll come up for you.
And it's on the Monomoy app too.
Oh yeah, it's on the app as well. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get to it. But this is what the login screen looks like. I pull one up, but if I log in, it just shows me. It just shows like my administrator view of it. It really wouldn't make any sense to you guys. And we can't make these like kind of fake accounts because everything that gets done in Aspen gets reported to the state. So we can't, as much as we'd love to create like these kind of fake accounts for demonstration purposes, we can't do it because it gets reported. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward. And once you kind of figure out where to go to find your student in Aspen when you log in, you click on, you can see all the classes. Just click on the classes. You should be able to find everything pretty easily. Google Classroom. So we've got Aspen, which is like for grades. That's really like the official reporting portal for the grades. Google Classroom is where kind of at this point, especially in middle school, high school, but it's even getting down into elementary school where a lot of stuff is happening. So a lot of assignments, links to resources, all kinds of things are happening in Google Classroom. And primarily because it's so easy to use. And it integrates so well with everything that we've got in the district. It's Google. So it integrates with Chromebooks, integrates with all the Google email, the docs, the drive, the slides, everything. So the main purpose of Google Classroom is to facilitate a kind of paperless communication system. It's a way for teachers to set up a class, and then within that class, they can share documents, they can share links, they can share images, videos, whatever it is that they want to share with the students regarding lessons or units. They can plug it right into Google Classroom, and the students will instantly have access to their classes, their teachers, their assignments, and it all shows up in this one very easy to use place. So again, teachers can create classes really quickly, and they can put assignments up super fast and make it easy for the kids to find everything. So the question always is, from the parent side, how do I see what's going on in Google Classroom? I want to know what's happening with the assignments, with the lessons that are happening, how's my kid doing, that kind of thing. So there's a couple of different ways you can go about it, depending on the relationship you have with your student. Some kids are fine saying, here, I'll just sign in and you can take a look at everything. And other kids may be like, I'm not going to do that. You can ask the teacher for access. So there's something called Guardian Invites. And Guardian Invites is something that the teacher can do on their end, where they can send an invitation to you as a parent. And all you need is an email address. It doesn't have to be Google, it doesn't have to be Gmail. It can just be any email address. And they'll send you an invite. And the invite, once you accept it, will give you a kind of limited access to that particular class. It doesn't allow you to go in and do anything, really. It just gives you a summary of what your student is up to in the class. So I'm going to just show you a quick view of what the summaries look like. So if you have accepted an invite from a Google Classroom class from one of your students' teachers, it'll look something like this. You'll get a summary sent to your email that gives you kind of a breakdown of what's happening in the class. And so they do it by the week. And then you can just sort of see
But this is only for, I get this for one of my kids, but I have to request for the other ones.
Yeah, so it's not like Aspen where you can go in and kind of see them all. You can't really toggle back and forth between the kids. So you have to ask for an invite from each of the teachers, and they'll send it out. They should send it out. So it'll just give you this sort of history of what's been going on in the class for the week. You can see up here that it'll say, missing from last week, and it'll show you if there was an assignment that was due and your child didn't turn it in. There'll be a notice about, you're missing this assignment from that week. Again, you can't really do anything about it. You can't go in and do anything about it in Google Classroom, but you can use this information to contact the teacher or to talk to your child and say, hey, what's going on? I've noticed that you were missing this assignment from social studies or whatever the class it was last week. What's going on with that? Yeah, sorry.
At the middle school level, they have a team of teachers, so that's the one that I received now, and I get from each of the one teacher might send out all of the classes. At the high school level, say I contacted my 10th graders math teacher, does that mean I'm only going to see the math assignments, or will it be all of his teachers that he has? Or would I have to contact his management teacher, his science teacher, I'd have to contact them. So it's different in high school than it is for the middle school.
Unfortunately, because it's...
And going back to that Aspen question I asked about the grades, is this more up to date, would you say, than would I be better off? Okay.
No, it's a good question. It's a really great question. So
and I get
part
that
of
there's time for them to get it in. I'm not disparaging the teachers on any level. I just want to be able, especially if she was out 5 days sick.
Yeah.
And not being able to do the work, even though she was trying, but That, I just wanted to see if one was more
Yeah, I'd say
real
that-
time.
So this is what's going on with the teachers and managing all of this. And what they do is they use classroom for the most part to really deliver the instruction, the assignments, the resources. They grade what happens in classroom, often in classroom, but they have to transfer the grades from classroom into Aspen. So there's this kind of extra kind of work that has to be done, transferred. This is eventually that's going to be bridged by Google's working on linking classroom with programs like Aspen. So probably within the next year, it'll be automated. So the teacher can do everything in classroom, assign the grade in classroom, and it'll automatically sync with Aspen and show up, which would actually streamline the whole thing. And you'd probably see the grade showing up in Aspen a lot faster.
Right.
So that's in the works, but
Good to know.
right now we're not there. So it's there's still that disconnect between the two where they have to move the grades from one to the other. So to answer your question, I would say if you want to see what's really going on kind of in the classroom in terms of the assignments and what kind of activities are going on, classroom is definitely the place where it's happening. For the most part, I can't say not every single teacher is using it, but it's gaining traction like crazy. I mean, just over the last couple of years, I've seen this huge upsurge in use of Google Classroom because it works and it's really, really, really easy to use. So you'll see more and more of it. And I would definitely encourage you to ask the teachers for an invite. And that way you can really get a sense of what the assignments are like. Whereas in Aspen, you get to see like the name of the assignment and then the grade, but it doesn't really give you as much information about, well, what's that assignment really about? Like what kind of activities were involved in it? What were the products that were created from it? What were the assessments, all that kind of thing. So I would definitely encourage you, look at Classroom. So this will just give you the summary, and that's, I think, something that's really helpful. But
And I would circle back to Jim's earlier point, which is never until they're outside of your home relieve your authority as the parent. Like, just log into your Google Classroom and show me your assignments. Like, that is going to be the fastest way to get in and see what they actually. It's like I think we worry sometimes about privacy. Like, there are kids, like we're responsible for helping make sure they graduate school. Like, exert your authority. Like, show me your Google Classroom. Like, it shouldn't be a negotiation. Like same like with cell phones. Like, I'm pretty sure you're paying the bill, right? So it's your phone. So if there's something you're worried about that's going on inside that phone, take the phone and get inside it and see what's going on. Because you're still their parent until the time they leave. You're still always going to be their parent. But I mean,
They come back.
But yeah, don't relieve that authority. You have it. Just claim it.
yeah, that's a good point.
If you
Yeah.
need to.
But that's good to know because I really didn't know about the requesting per teacher for the Google Classroom. So for a great example, my daughter's a dutiful student. I don't have much complaints in that regard. She shows me everything great, almost too much sometimes. I'm nauseating this. But the Google Classroom was good when she was not feeling well, and I felt like disconnected a little bit, and she really was down and out. And I felt like if I could have gone on, it's good to know moving forward now. So.
Yeah.
Instead of saying now when she's trying to get in here early in the morning and make up the work, and I was on her, like, you better, you have to, that kind of thing. But just to be able to just log on real quick and be like, hey, did you know you have 3 creative writing assignments due when you were out? Just that kind of like support, like you were just saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it is something too when kids are out, if they're feeling well enough to like tackle small portions or whatever, it's when it's being used, which is like Jim said, a lot of teachers are utilizing, especially in middle school. It's a way to see what was assigned for that day. Some things kids can get a jump start on, even if they're out sick, because they can go in and see. And that's just a thing too, like to know for your kids, if they got dismissed early for a sports game, like did you go in and see what your assignments were in the classes that you missed? Like, you know, that's part of helping sort of manage and support them and planning ahead. Like, let's not wait till tomorrow to find out when you can go in today and find out what you missed.
And some teachers use it really robustly, like they will post discussion notes from their lecture, or they will post actual examples of presentations they used in class, or that sort of thing. So some teachers really have a lot of information there that the kids can access if they're kind of paying attention and using it as that resource.
So this is just like a quick test class that was set up. So this is what it looks like in the classroom. So you wouldn't necessarily see this unless you logged in as your student. So so from a teacher viewpoint, this is like one of my classes, and then I can add assignments here. So these are all just like different assignments that have been created, and you just add these, and the kids see that automatically in their classroom when they log in. So each class has people like connected to it. So I can just go up to people, and again, this is like really not much going on in here because it's just a quick test class. So you know, I've just added a few like, you know, these like fake accounts that we use to test things. So you would have a whole list of students in class here, but you know, each kid's in the class, and then as a teacher, I can say invite the guardian. So that's where the invitations happen. So in each class, a teacher can go in and say, "Oh, I'm going to invite, you know, this student's parents or guardian," and they can just type in the email right there. And then that shoots home to you. You get an email saying, "Oh, you know, teacher so-and-so is asking you to, you know, join the Google Classroom as a parent." And then you just accept it. And then after that, you start getting the summaries and you'll be able to see everything. So that's one way to do it. And the other way is, like Mark said, you can just assert your authority and say, show me your classroom. I want to see what's going on there. And then you can really get in there and see what's going on with the assignments and check out all the stuff that's happening. But it's been a real game changer. I have to say, it's like, as far as homework goes, you know, there's no more excuses. You know, you can't say, "Oh, well, I didn't know what the assignment was. You know, I was sick and I didn't get the homework last night." It's like, it's all there now. So you can just say, "Well, did you check Google Classroom and see what was posted?" So it's becoming kind of, it's harder and harder for the kids to get away with anything these days because it's all kind of, you know, online. It's all accessible. It's all there. So so that's good news. Actually, it's really good news. So the key, I think, is for you as parents and guardians is to just sort of understand like where to find this information. And that's where I'm just going to keep kind of saying Aspen. That's where you're going to see the grades. Those are like the final grades that end up on the report cards. And then Classroom is where all the action is happening at the moment. That's where the assignments are posted, and that's where everything is really, you know, in the moment is where you're going to see what's happening in the classroom. That makes sense? Yeah. Good. Yeah, there's not much else I really need to show you on Classroom. It's just knowing that you can be invited to see what's going on. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. That's pretty much it. Questions about any of this? Yes.
I really could have used this course about 3 weeks ago when a book talk was due, and I was crazy just trying to help him do some slides. He's a fifth grader.
Okay.
I just, like, is there any videos that as a parent I can watch to learn, and maybe I missed that's when I stepped out, but you were talking about Aspen, but that I can learn how just to navigate within Classroom, like, and in Aspen, I couldn't even print up. I had a hard time, and I'm very computer illiterate. Anyhow, I could not even figure out how to print his report card up.
Yeah, I have trouble with that one too.
And
Aspen's tricky that way. It's
I'm
yeah. it's,
I was crazy between slides and docs and there's just some differences and just, so are there some videos that I can do and watch on my own?
yeah, absolutely. What you could do if you want to is just send me an email
Okay.
with some questions about, like, I'd like to know more about how to access docs or whatever the specifics are that you're having trouble with. You can send me a request and I can send you like tutorials and links.
But there's like nothing online, or maybe there is.
There is, it's just like a sea of information, so he's gonna sort of curate it a little bit for you.
I see.
That's part of the problem is there's so
I
much out
understand.
there that and a lot of the stuff that bubbles up to the top when it comes to like classroom is when you start checking the dates on some of them are really like 2014, 2016. It just seems like it's kind of out of date, but somehow it's showing up in searches near the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, send me the questions directly.
Okay.
My email is jbirchfield@montmoy.edu. It's BIRCHFIELD.
BIRCH field
Yeah, that's it, Birchfield.
at Montmoy.
Yep. Yeah, feel free to email me anytime with questions
Okay.
about any of the technology stuff, and I can definitely point you in the right direction.
That would be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. That's what I'm here for. Yes.
I just had, his son is over at the middle school, so I just had his teacher send out an email to all the students over the weekend to check their reflections because they needed them. She was missing them, and so I asked him, I said, she said to go in, she specifically said to go into Aspen.
Yeah.
And I just found out that my daughter has access to her Aspen account. Are all of the students at the middle school and high school supposed to, or is that, because he looked at me like I had three heads. He's never been in Aspen, he's never been told anything about Aspen. So I went into mine,
Yeah.
and there was nothing under that class. There was no assignments. There was no anything except his grade, and I emailed her, and she said they were supposed to be there, and I'm going, they're not.
What grade level?
7.
7.
And then I noticed that on the progress report, it had said there was something about teacher comments to see some section in Aspen,
Yeah.
and I
That's
never
really hard to find.
could find that either. And
Yeah.
but that was so that
Yeah, so the
this
middle
class
schoolers,
was timely for that.
yeah, the middle schoolers and the high schoolers do have access to their own Aspen information. And if your child doesn't have that login, they can just stop by the guidance office and Ms. Bissett in the guidance office can help them. I ran into it with my own middle schooler because he forgot his password and I can't reset his password in Aspen for him and told him, and he went and they were able to work it out. And it's actually a helpful tool because especially as they get to the high school age, what I say to my high schooler now usually is, have you checked Aspen? Like, you know, I'm not gonna go on every day and check your grades, but have you checked Aspen to see if your grades are in and if they reflect reality? You know, are you getting marked as having something missing when you did turn it in? You know, it adds that level of responsibility to them. And so I think they're trying to get the middle schoolers to slowly get in that habit of knowing that they can check that themselves and find that information there. So, but yeah, if your student somehow didn't get the password or hasn't had a chance to log in, they can just go to Ms. Bissett at the guidance office and she can get them all set up.
Good at 5th grade hasn't had a reason to use it yet.
Yeah.
They just-
Well, we're new to this. They're new to this school for this,
Okay.
so I don't know if somehow it got.
Yeah, it might have been
Lost
issued in
in
5th
all
grade
of
and
the-
so it wasn't, yeah.
Absolutely. Go to the guidance department first. You know, like if you're having any issues with Aspen, I would start with the guidance department, just in terms of access. You're blocked out or something is not right. Like it sounds like you're not seeing things that you
But
should
should
see.
if it's in his, should I be able to see it?
Yeah.
If it's an assignment, maybe not.
Because I can see my daughters at the
Yeah.
9th grade level.
Right, so it could be something that's, like, I would contact the guidance office, because for whatever reason, like, you couldn't maybe not be matched appropriately to your son, like, yeah. It's like inside the system, like, you know, you're assigned as parent 2, which gives you a different level of access, so maybe it's not matched, or there's something on the teacher end that isn't connected right, so something that should be in there that you should be able to view isn't. So, but it's a helpful come there along process. But if like if your kid goes in and they can see the grade and you can't, that is probably because for some reason the tool is more connected inside the system.
And about finding the teacher comments, if you want to stay at the end, and I think I can find it, it's like you just have to keep clicking buttons. Oh, good, perfect. You have to just sort of keep drilling down to find the weird little spot where the teacher comments are. Yeah, it's tricky to find it.
Yeah, it's not the most user-friendly program, but it's real. I call it a real programmer's program. It's very like, it's really powerful, but it doesn't have that kind of like warm and fuzzy user interface that people like it.
It's a database,
Right.
and so it operates like a database. And
Yeah,
so
it
you
really
know how to
is.
use it. It's not set up.
Right.
They've tried to make it like
Yeah.
end user friendly, but it's not sort of how it was designed originally. So it's like trying to
Exactly.
stick on it.
Yeah, which goes back to your comment about not being able to print from the thing. Like when my kids were in high school, in another district, they were using Aspen, and I used to pull my hair out trying to print stuff out. And I'm like, I can't even. It was incredibly hard to figure out how to print something that didn't print out like really weird looking. Like,
I just wanted to print his report card.
Yeah, right. It's just something as simple as that. So it's a very powerful program. It does a huge amount of good for us as a district, and it's really a great tool. But there's a lot of places where things can go wrong in it, where one little checkbox could disconnect you from seeing the grades for one of your students, something like that. So definitely, if you feel like something's not right, contact guidance at the school where your student is, and they usually are really good about trying to figure out where something's disconnected or not working right. And then if that doesn't get you satisfaction, I guess email me and I'll figure it
Well,
out.
and one of the things Jim and I have talked about and haven't gotten around to doing yet is trying to film some brief little tutorials about navigating through Aspen, because we know how hard it is for people to find that stuff, and it would be just brief, like 1 or 2 minute, here's how you download and print the report card, or here's how you find the teacher comments, or those little kind of tricky parts that you can't really describe unless you're looking at them. So hopefully we'll get that done before too long, and we can get those out to people.
Yeah, we can do that. If you email me your questions like that, we can create little screencasts with them. Basically, just somebody will narrate and click through. It's like a little video that just kind of like what you saw in the tutorial that was there, but we can do it more specific to what you're looking for. So like how to print the report card. It'll show exactly where to click.
Because it wasn't a print tab.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
Usually what happens is you have to download the PDF and then open it up and print it.
I tried that. I tried opening, or, doing Safari, opening in Safari or whatever, and
Yeah, sometimes if you download it like directly to your hard drive and then open it up from there, it kind of gets away from the weird web-based
okay.
part of it.
Yeah, something like that might work. Yeah. I know there, Holly thing is she manages Aspen. She's like the database manager for it. So that whenever there's an issue, we always go to her, and she seems to be able to figure it out. She did mention to me today that the report cards, when they show up, they show up kind of down the bottom, and it's not real obvious where they are, but they're PDF files that show up down near the bottom of the screen, and you can actually download that onto your computer, open it up in Acrobat, and it should give you a better version to print from. So it's stuff like that it's a little bit tricky until you or until somebody tells you like, oh, that's where it is.
It might be easier. My Macintosh, my
Yeah.
PC is down, so I'm limited to this right now.
Yeah, and they behave differently on the Mac sometimes than it does on Windows. Anything else?
At what age do they start emailing the teacher themselves?
Well, should they? Is that what, should they start emailing?
At what grade?
Yeah, by the 5th grade, they all have, because that was something that the middle school principal wanted, because he communicates some school-based things out to the kids. So they have school-based emails in 5th grade.
At 5th grade?
They're assigned. I mean, they have them technically all the way down to kindergarten. They just are not. They're not given access to them, because they need them for account access to different, like a lot of our stuff, other things are linked to their Google account. But like as far as actually being able to send and receive emails by 5th grade, that's when that feature gets turned on inside the district. So their district email, which is first initial last name, graduation year, right?
Yeah.
At monomoy.edu.
Just the last 2 digits of graduation.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So it's, we create what we call a walled garden when it comes to the email. So ages 13 and under are in the walled garden, which means they can communicate with the email with the teachers within the district, but they can't send anything out and they can't receive anything from outside. So it's kind of like that protected zone.
Personally, I started teaching my kids how to send those sorts of emails in 5th grade because it's not something that necessarily comes naturally to them.
I didn't know he had the ability to.
So I would sort of explain to them, if you have a question about this assignment, you send an email that says, "Dear Mrs. So-and-so, I don't understand, how to do this problem," whatever the question might be, and kind of start teaching them with you right by their side how to do that. The other part of it is within Google Classroom, there's usually the ability to send messages or sort of comment on assignments so they can have a dialogue that way too. So if it's, if the teacher posts a piece of reading for them to do and the student has a question about that specific assignment, they can have that conversation within the Google Classroom universe as well without sort of sending a separate email.
Right.
Although
But that's
that
like for everyone
comes
to
as an
see.
email to the teacher.
Yeah,
So
that
it's
particular
like-
case it would be. It
Yeah.
all depends. It depends upon the nature. Like if it's an assignment, like because I can share something as a student or whatever with an individual, so then only the 2 of us. So it depends upon the particular nature of the particular assignment. If I share a document with Jim and I comment, he's the only one that can see it because it's just shared between the 2 of us. But to circle back to the email, like my 8th grader at this point now, it was a process, but she emails the club advisor when she's got questions. She emails her teacher. She emailed a different teacher she doesn't even have inside the building because she was looking for a vocal coach. So she emailed the chorus teacher. It's the world that they're living in and thinking around 5th grade about being able to build good email habits and they have that ability starting then. But like Jim said, they can't email with their district level account until after they're 13. They can't email outside the district, but they can still email
That's a
inside the
legal,
district.
requirement. So, but yeah, that's part of our digital literacy, digital citizenship. We're trying to instill these good habits early on so that they're good digital citizens. Anything else? No? Well, thanks for coming out on a cold night.
If you didn't get a chance to sign in, there's sign-in sheets on each table. Feel free to grab as many stickers as you'd like, and the flyers on the table are for our next parent anniversary in December.
And we'll, if they put their email, we'll share the